Hello, welcome to War Gamer. I'm your host, Rob, and I'm live in the studio. It's a lovely Tuesday. Apologies for being late. Start the recording for the podcast. Hello, welcome to War Gamer. I'm your host, Rob. You've had to hear this twice. Welcome to our daily show. I'm very excited today. Apologise for being late. We were waiting on the delivery for our roaming cam, and then Amazon decided to bring it during the point when I'm meant to be live. Fine. That's the life. But hello and welcome. Hello, Bling Marine. I hope you're well. Today is an exciting show. Thank you to everyone on the War Gamer Patreon. You guys are the best. So thanks for being there for me and helping us put on the show. You guys are awesome. And of course, welcome to everyone on Twitch. I hope you're well. If you listen to the podcast, hope you're staying hydrated. Right, today's a very exciting show for me, because I think that we're going to look at some incredibly good units in the game, which aren't really getting much like attention or love. And I think it's an exciting rundown to do. And that rundown is Flamespyre and Frostheart Phoenixes. And specifically, Elgav Dandavius, I was just speaking to you. Especially inside Cities of Sigmar. I think it's an incredibly cool army, but a little bit of prefix before we go into it. A lot of people, when they're new, or even when they're not new, or when they're trying to design army lists, one of the things that they often talk about or try and focus on is that they want fun armies. That's what they say. They want fun armies. And for me, interactivity is what really people mean when they're talking about fun. When they say I want to have fun, they mean I want to have an interactive game. And for me, when we get to talk about the Flamespyre Phoenixes, and much like the Doom Wheels or the Hellpit Abomination, as if you've listened to previous shows, you'll get on board with. For me, the Flamespyre Phoenix is exactly what you want from a fun unit, because it has a key interaction which produces, in my opinion, a really fun game experience for both you and your opponent. And so when you are looking at, if we're looking at just, hello Sinise, hope you're well. When you are talking about any unit in the game, you've got to ask yourself, is there any back and forth between you and your opponent? And if there is some back and forth, I think that's what generates interactivity. I think that's what makes people enjoy themselves. So that's kind of like the proviso or the statement before we go on to talk about these units. High Reflex. And what's really interesting about that is these two units are at opposite ends of that spectrum. The Frostheart Phoenix does does debuffs, which effectively cancels out that interactivity. It makes you feel worse about your army. The Flamespyre Phoenix comes back to life or doesn't. So it's a really exciting time for you and your opponent at that dice roll. So I'm going to encourage this type of build. And I think these are a really... hey, Crazy Horse, hope you're well. How's being veggie going? So let's get into it, because I don't have long, and we do have a social media intern doing a interview at 3:00, which is weird and fun. So I'm looking forward to meeting up with him. Right, I know, right? That's odd. Now, Phoenixes. So there isn't much lore. So we're doing the narrative, and the lore for this army. For some reason there isn't. There's loads on the elf part, so there's loads on the actual Phoenix Guard and on the Anointed, but there's very little on the Phoenixes. They did say that they are the children of the Phoenix, which is a god beast. So some of the Volcatrix is another god beast, and some of the god beasts were slain, and Archeon was trying to capture and or slay some god beasts at a certain point during the narrative. But the Phoenix, so this big god, or this big god beast, sorry, the normal Phoenixes are the children, and that's the end of it. That's the long, the short, and all the other bits in between for the Phoenixes, which is it's a bit of a shame, I guess. But I guess the problem is they can't really touch on the lore too much, because it's so ingrained into like popular culture. They can't really IP protect it, so they're probably going to get rid of it at some point. But that's not today. So I went and researched what it was in classical mythology. So in classical mythology, a phoenix is a unique bird that lives for 5 or 6 centuries in the Arabian desert, and after this time, burning itself on a funeral pyre, and rising from the ashes with a renewed youth to live through another cycle. And then also, the most famous example I could find of a phoenix was, of course, get ready, Harry Potter fans, Dumbledore's phoenix. Or the phoenix in X-Men, which is another great example of the phoenix living inside Jean Grey. Don't want to ruin it for you. Apparently, according to Sneeze, Shalaxi wants to also pin down or kill a god beast too, but can't find one. There's also River Phoenix, another famous phoenix. And is there not an American football team called the Phoenixes? Or I don't know. Yeah, there's Dark Phoenix as well. And unfortunately, Games Workshop have put no more. I actually am very disappointed with the narrative in the Cities of Sigmar book. It's got the most options, but some of the smallest narrative I've seen. However, the Phoenicium, which is a city dedicated to the Phoenixes or to the Phoenix Temple, isn't, and this is super important, isn't the home of the Phoenixes. They actually, in the narrative, as far as I can see, haven't described where the Anointed have come from originally. However, the way Anointed are created, and also the way that Phoenix Guard are created, is that they are elves that fought chaos, and they've taken a mortal wound. They then go put them on a pyre that's underneath a Flamespyre Phoenix, which is dying. It then burns them, and then they're reborn, and then they come alive. The Anointed, what they do is they stare into a phoenix that's being reborn, and they get like shattered visions, and they do this for decades, even centuries at some points, and they see into the future and can see possible futures. So that's what the elf bits does it. That's what the elf bits do anyway. Harry Potter, yes. Dark Phoenix, no, apparently. Bling Marine. So your choices are between classical Greek Phoenix, X-Men Phoenix, and Harry Potter Phoenix. Your choice in the Twitch chat, let me know. Hey, Battle Chode. Right, so that is the narrative, and as you can see there, on the overlay is a picture of a Frost Phoenix, and there's the Flame Phoenix with an Anointed on. For me, I prefer the Flame Phoenix because the Frost Phoenix has got these, I think, quite tacky little frosty elements on them, which do look like if a child was going to design something, that would be the one, right? So can I get a vote in the chat which one you're voting for? And if you are listening to this back, let me know which one you're voting for, Frost Phoenix or Fire Phoenix. I think the Fire Phoenix is cooler, but then I'm a bit of a traditional fantasy fan, and I quite like wizards who just do Fireball. I know that's super boring. I just think it's really traditional, and I like it. Like, I don't know why. It's just, that's fantasy in my head sometimes. Snowflake says to Tomb King Tristan, Frost, Gwerzy likes the Frost one, Snowflake sprinkles. They look terrible, but okay. I'm voting for Fire Phoenix, but you can make your own decision. Now, obviously, you can have a rider on top of it, which is an Anointed, or you can have it without the rider on top as well. And they give you different rules. Trog like Frost as it's shiny, Trog like shiny. Denise likes the Chili Bird as well. Apparently, all of you are into the Frost version. Fair enough. All right, so let's talk about the rules. I'm going to start with points real quick because you've got the Anointed. So you've got the Anointed version, and then you've got the non-ridden version. So you've got the character version, and then just the monster version. Now, there's a 100-point difference between the two on each example. The Anointed on Flamespyre Phoenix is 300 points. The Anointed on Frostfire Phoenix is 320 points. And then the Flame Phoenix, which just on its own is 200, and the Frost Phoenix just on its own is 220. Right, so let's talk about the actual War Scrolls and go through those, and then we'll start talking about them in the cities, because I think there's a couple of ways that you can think about them and a couple of ways you can approach them. The main difference, with the exception of the attacks that you get for the rider of having the Anointed, is of course the Attune to Magic, which is, in your hero phase, if a friendly wizard within 12 inches of this model casts a spell that is not unbound, this model is imbued with magical energy, and you can add 1 to its save rolls for attacks that target this unit while it's imbued with magical energy, which is good. Yeah. So that is the... oh, no, they both get that, sorry. they both get that. I read the wrong rule out. It's the Witness to Destiny special rule. So they all get, if you cast a spell near them, they get +1 to their save. The Witness to Destiny special rule is, if this model includes an anointed, each time you allocate a wound or a mortal wound on a 4+, that mortal wound is ignored. Now this is huge, because basically it makes a Flamespyre Phoenix, which is 200 points. If you add 100 points on, you're basically doubling the wound count for this model, because it's saving half of those wounds. So it's a really efficient way of doubling up the wounds. So if you're going to take an anointed on Flamespyre Phoenix, for example, which are 300 points, or you could take 2 Flamespyre Phoenixes for 400 points, it's more efficient to get the 300 point one model, but obviously you don't double the output. This is just based on the wounds and its defensiveness. So there's a really interesting convo, and you think, well, of course I'm going to take the anointed on Frostheart Phoenix, like obviously, or I'm going to take the anointed on Flamespyre Phoenix. They're just loads better. However, if you start to multiply them, which I think is where I'd like to go with this army, they do different things. So you have that in your head. The maths is really interesting, but it's just I think you could have several of these Phoenixes. You could build them in different ways, and I think that's what's really fun. Bling Marine, thanks for subscribing. Right, so all of the Phoenixes have got 12 wounds, and they all have a 4-up save. Okay, so 12 wounds with a 4-up save, and before they get damaged, they all move 16 inches, which is absolutely huge. Now, in close combat, there's not much. There's a big difference between the Flamespyre and the Frostheart. The Flamespyre isn't as good. It's got 2 attacks with a 2-inch. No, not 2 attacks. Sorry, 6 attacks before it gets wounded, and that drops down eventually to 2. And it hits on a 4, which is bad. Wounds on a 3, and then it has rend 1 and only does 2 damage. So it's really not great in combat for a model. However, what it does do, Crazy Horse, thanks for giving everyone in the chat who isn't a subscriber, like Battlechode, DeBaron, AOS Coach, Misdirector, and Burugwani. Thank you for doing that. And now they're all members of the hashtag Grot Gang. The Grot Gang. That is, you are radical. I love you, tons. And well done on staying on that veggie hype. We'll get there. Next year when I see you in Nashville, we're going to be so slim. And I'm getting fat, weirdly, but okay. Anyway. So in combat, the Flamespyre Phoenix isn't as good as the Frostheart Phoenix. The Frostheart Phoenix has got 8 attacks, hits on 3, so it hits 1 better. It's got twice as many. Well, no, it's got an extra 2 attacks. It's got rend of 1, and it does 2 damage. So it's just better in close combat, right? Oh, thanks, Crazy Horse. Oh, baby, Nashville. Yeah, Tristan, I might come to Nashville. Anyway. So the Flamespyre is not as good in close combat, but what the Flamespyre does have over the Frostheart Phoenix is the ability, and this is why I think it's a secretly powerful unit, is the ability to fly over a unit. So it's got the Wake of Fire. After this model has made a normal move, you pick one enemy unit that has any models that this model passed across and roll a dice. On a 2+, that unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the Wake of Fire, shown on the value above. And the value is 5 mortal wounds, which is great. Now, don't forget, it moves 16 inches. We're going to talk about all the ways you can improve its movement. And of course, you can run. Run is a normal move, yeah? So if you really wanted to, and you could spend a CP, you could make it move 20 inches, fly over a unit, fly back, and it's done 5 mortal wounds. So it's decent in its output, right? Biroganal, did I just become part of the Grot Gang? You did become part of the Grot Gang. Hashtag welcome. Hashtag Grot Gang. Anyway, so 5 mortal wounds. Now, obviously, so one of the things I'm going to propose is running 4 of these without anointed on top. Now, as we talked about, having anointed on top is way more efficient in your points for wounds that you get. However, what I really, really want to do is have 800 points, which is a large part of your army, obviously nearly 50%, although it's not all of your army, which I think is key. Yeah. Whereas an anointed, if you wanted to run 4 anointed, that's going to set you back 1,200 points. Now, the difference might be worth it. You might say to yourself, actually, I'm going to run 4 of these. And if you do, I think you've got a really rad army compared to 4 Frostheart Phoenixes. But they all do different jobs. However, being able to fly and then do 20 mortal wounds across a unit from this kind of like wake of fire is so interesting as a mechanic. Now, doubling on that, and the reason I think it's, again, extra good and is really pushing the idea of interactivity, so you and your opponent are having a good time, is the Phoenix Reborn special rule. So the first time this model is slain, before removing it from the battlefield, you roll a dice. On a 1 to 3, the model is slain. On a 4 to 5, this model is not slain. All wounds allocated are healed, and it just comes back to life, which is bonkers. And again, if you just have one, I don't really think it's a good piece. Don't get me wrong. Like, it flies around, it could do 5 mortal wounds. It's like, when it's 200 points, it's cheap enough that your opponent doesn't really care. So it's just doing its thing. The ability to come back once is great. When you double that up to 4 of them, now you're getting into this super weird and interesting place where you statistically are going to get 2 back every time, which is an additional 14 wounds a time. It's an additional 200 points or additional 300 points. And I think... Rob, I'm not made of money. Frigates cost a lot of maple bucks, and I'm sorry. Yeah, if you are a subscriber as well, and thank you to Crazy Horse or anyone who already does subscribe, you can use all of our emojis when we're live, which is pretty cool. You can also use those emojis on other channels. So, for instance, if you ever want to start a hashtag GrotGang chat anywhere else, someone else is live, and you want to GrotGang their chat, feel free. So, can you see where my head is at? With the ability, so it's not a shooting attack. The flaming talent, the wake of fire. It's not a shooting attack. It's a move attack. So it's just a special ability. So it can't be debuffed. Can't do anything. Okay. So frigate balloons plus wings equals a phoenix. Yeah, man. See. Now you're getting it. I think you could do like a little. You could do a giant dirigible that's a Flamespyre Phoenix that's really just a giant gyro bomber. You could remodel that as something, but it's also pretty unique. There aren't tons of armies that do this. So this is just the War Scroll. I can't stop talking about it. I'm going to run it because I think it's so good, so good. And I think it's so interesting. And also the fun of bringing them back. Now, if you take the Anointed, obviously they get the Witness to Destiny. So they're going to half all the wounds that they take as well, which, again, is pretty terrifying. And your opponent might try and not kill them, just so that... Anyway, but I think the Anointed, if you're running 4, I would probably take just the monster version. Okay, so then the Frostheart Phoenix has got the special ability, the Blizzard Aura, which is a range of 9 inches. So if you're... Does it have to be wholly within now? Nope. So any... So subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by enemy units within range of the Blizzard Aura ability of any friendly models. The range of the Blizzard Aura ability for this model is shown on the damage table. So it's 9 inches. So being able to... So -1 to wound is quite rare. And... Now, inside, when we get to talking about the army quickly, or the armies that you can put this in, that -1 to wound, when you double up with the minuses to hit, which you're going to be able to get out of the Cities of Sigmar book, you can really debuff your opponent. And having just a regular Frostheart Phoenix, which is 220 points, running in, and then just debuffing the army is quite good. For me, I think this one, you always take an Anointed on Frostheart Phoenix, because now it's got the 4-up save. It's -1 to wound. I think it does a very... I think you look at the Frostheart Phoenix, you think, that's great. It does, like the Anointed on Frostheart Phoenix, right? You think, that's great. It's really good. It'll make a great general. It'll make my Phoenix Guard battle line. I love it. It's a great unit. You look at the Flamespyre and you think, oh, that's not as good. So I'm just going to take the Frostheart. But they do, in my opinion, vastly different jobs. Like, they're utterly different. Now... Not in a very different way to a unit of Chaos Knights, some with lances, some with swords and sorcerer weapons and shields. You're like, okay, these guys kind of attrition, these guys have to charge. But this is, I think, two completely different jobs and almost two completely different units. I mean, they are different units, but am I making sense? Right. So the debuff or the Wake of Fire. Now let's look at the different armies you can take them in. Now, when you take them in Cities of Sigmar, all endless spells are empowered, obviously. So the first thing to say there is that Life Swarm, if you take it in a Cities of Sigmar army, is going to heal D6 back to one of these models. Now it's 50 points for Life Swarm, but again, healing D6 back into the Frostheart Phoenixes or the Flamespyre Phoenixes is going to keep that attrition rate up, especially if you're going for the more tanky Frostheart Phoenix build. Although Frostfire is cool, but we'll go for Frostheart. We'll go for the Frostheart Phoenix build. I think then obviously Life Swarm's a really good option as an endless spell. Really good. Another one obviously is Geminids if you're going for the Frostheart Phoenix, because the ability to make an opposing army minus to hit, and then the Frostheart makes a minus to wound. You can just debuff your opponent's army quite effectively for very little. For a wizard, an endless spell, and the Frostheart Phoenix being on the board. So if I take 2, an Anointed Frost and Flamethrower, great to see you. You could take 2. Like, for me, I love this idea of the Flight of the Valkyries for Flamespires. So I'm entrenched there. But obviously you guys make your decisions as you want to go. And I'm not saying that's the best way. I think that's a really fun, interactive way. But let's look at them in different armies. So healing D6, great, especially when we go and look at the other cities where you're able to add an additional D6. So you could be healing 2D6. Anyway, so if we take them in Hammer Hall, so the command ability Righteous Purpose, you can use this at the end of the combat phase on a friendly Hammer Hall unit that's wholly within the enemy territory, within 12 inches of a friendly Hammer Hall hero. So if you made your Hammer Hall Phoenix your general, he can fly off, incredibly fast, movement 16, charge, and then make himself attack again. Pretty good. So command traits, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons. Also start the game with an extra command point. Good. That's the Academia Prodigy. That's good on him. Blood of the 12, reroll wound rolls for 1 for melee attacks made by friendly units wholly within 12 inches of the general. I think that's rad, especially if you're taking maybe, let's say, multiple Flamespyre Phoenixes. You're charging them all in a turn, and then you're re-rolling. Or you take in, 1 general Frostheart Phoenix and 3 Flamespyre Phoenixes, flying them all in. They're hitting those lines, they're doing the mortal wounds, and then they are re-rolling their wound rolls of 1 is great because they're wounded on 3s. Then you've got Aggressive General, add 1 to the hit for melee attacks made by the friendly units wholly within 12 inches of the general, if this general made a charge moving the same turn. Now, that's great on the Frosthearts because it means they're now hitting on 2s. It's also great on the Flamespyres because it means they're now doing the same thing as the Frosthearts, and they're also doing their Wake of Fire. So I really like Aggressive General. I think that's really decent as well. Then you've got Artifacts of Power. You've got the Armor of Malice, which is add 1 to save rolls for the bearer. So when you cast a spell near any of these Phoenixes, they're going to get +1 to their save. So they're on a 3+ save. So now they're on a 2+ save. Well, the general is on a 2+ save. Now that's pretty radical in my opinion. Like, because that's one of the things you're not seeing when you're looking at those Frostheart Phoenixes. They're not on a 4+ save normally. If you're getting the spells off, they're on a 3+ save, right? Which is just cool, right? So that's really, really survivable if that's the route that you want to go down. And then you've got Saint's Blade, which improves a weapon by 1, the rend of 1. Then you've got the Twin Stones, which I think is a really cool artifact as well. You can activate the artifact in each of your hero phases. Ashqui, add 1 to hit for melee attacks made by friendly units wholly within 12 inches of the bearer. So +1 to hit for melee attacks made by friendly units wholly within 12. So it does the same thing as the Aggressive General. So you don't need to do that. So now you can have reroll wound rolls for units nearby, and you can add +1 to hit from Ashqui. Or Garan Aspect, roll d6 for each enemy unit wholly within 12 inches of the bearer on a 4+. You can heal d3 wounds that were previously allocated to that unit. So again, that heals those Phoenixes up really well and is super strong. So D6 plus some D3s. So the Ashqui, is that right? Symbol? I think that's right. So that for me, it feels like a Frostheart Phoenix General there. and then the Flamespyres, or maybe just more Frosthearts at the front. In combat, incredibly tough to deal with. Look, they're on a 3-up save. The general's on a 2-up save. They're ignoring wounds and mortal wounds on a 4+. Pretty good. Pretty good. Then Tempest Eye is where I would do my Flight of the Phoenixes, I think. Because with the Flight of Speed, the battle trait Alert and Forewarned, you can add 3 inches to the movement and +1 to save for Tempest Eye units until the end of the first battle round. So I take my Flamespyre Phoenixes, I cast a spell. Sweet. I'm going to pick probably Chronomantic Cogs, which is going to add +3 inches to my movement. In my first turn, I move +3 inches. So now I'm going an extra 6 inches. So my Flamespyre Phoenixes are moving 22 inches. They're adding +1 to save from the spell that was cast, and they've got +1 to save because of Alert and Forewarned. So if you really wanted to, in the first turn, you could have 4 Phoenixes for 1,200 points, including you need to add a Wizard and Chronomantic Cogs, who are on a 2-up save, a 4-up ignoring all damage save, and they're moving 22 inches, and they're doing 5 mortal wounds each if they move over a unit, and then they can charge into combat. It's just great. Like, it's super gimmicky. It's super it's not in any way a good army list, I don't think, but it's a really good fun build. Also, once they've killed it, or if they kill any of those Phoenixes, the fire ones specifically, you're going to roll a 4+, and that guy might just be right there, back, full wounds, ready to wake a fire over another unit. Now, it doesn't have loads of output, but it's really, really fun. And that only requires you to just be Tempest Eye and then cast a different spell. And you can add a bunch of Kharadron Overlords in there as well. Okay, so command traits. You can add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Tempest Eye units that are wholly within 12 inches of the general. Aether Guard Captain. Awesome. Hawkeye, add 1 to wound rolls for missile attacks that made by friendly. That won't really affect anything. And Swift of the Wind, you can run and charge hero amount fight at the start of the combat phase. So same thing. Run and charge now. So now we're casting cogs. We're doing a run. That's an additional 6 inches. So now my general Phoenix is going 28 inches. And then it's charging. Which is just awesome, right? Artifacts of Power. You do not take battle shock test for units within 12. Seer Stone Amulet, get a CP on a 4+. And the Zephyrite Banner, reroll charge rolls for friendly Tempest Eye units that are wholly within 12 inches of the bearer. So that's a good one. You could reroll all those charge rolls with the units that are all flying up. I think that's really fun. Then you got the Spell Lore, Aura of Glory, cast on 7, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons for friendly Tempest Eye units that are wholly within 12 inches of the caster. So that's good. Strike of Eagles and also Celestial Visions, neither of which really help this army. So for me, Tempest Eye is the super fun, sling a bunch of Flamespyre Phoenixes forward, have a great time. Does anyone like that? I think that's fun. I think that's really rad. Phoenixes then. Hallowheart. Now, the battle trait for Hallowheart, obviously, is that they ignore spells on a 5+. This is going to make those Frostheart Phoenixes, and also the Flamespyre Phoenixes, even stronger, because they've got their 4-up anointed save if you take the anointed version, or they are going to ignore spells on a 5+. So they might not even have to be making those 4-up saves. It's very, very strong. And I think Hallowheart being so strong is really good anyway. However, normally you want your general to be a wizard because you want to take use of the command ability, but there's something to be said for a different Hallowheart build. And that would be the command trait, Veteran of the Blazing Crusade. Do not take battle shot tests for friendly units wholly within 18 units of the general. That's pretty good if you're looking to build some other stuff into your army. Artifact of Power is the Agroxleo Prism. Subtract 1 from missile attacks that target the bearer. So your general, if it's a Frostheart, for example, could be -1 to hit from shooting. It could also be, you could take something as simple as the Griffeather Charm, which is just going to flat make it -1 to hit. And if you're casting Geminids, another -1 to hit. Now the spell lore, the obvious one is Seer Wounds. So this is going to allow you to heal D6. So if you wanted to make the unkillable Frostheart Phoenix, heal D6 from Seer Wounds, heal D6 from Life Swarm. It's really, really, really strong. You've got Warning Brand and Ignite Weapons also, which you could cast on a Phoenix as well. So I think what's strong about taking them in Hallowheart is ignoring the spell lore, but also casting all the additional endless spells which are going to give you debuffs. So I really can see a Frostheart Phoenix working really well in this army with Geminids and some other stuff, because it just defends. I actually don't know what I just said then. So that's a good one. Next up, Living City is Living City is another. Oh, I don't know. Another really good one, right? So battle trait is Hunters the Living Pass, which basically means you can start units off the board. That isn't that good for the Phoenixes specifically, because they've got such good movement, and especially if you're taking the Flamespyre Phoenixes, you're going to want to be flying over stuff. So I would say that leaving stuff off the board isn't a big deal. However, the Phoenixes are so tanky that you can leave other stuff off the board and leave the Phoenixes on the board to survive. Command traits, you've got Iron Oak Artisan, add 1 to save rolls on this general. So now we've got our Frostheart or our Flamespyre Phoenix on a 3-up save, and then with Attune to Magic, it's going to be on a 2-up save. Or you've got Fast Rider, can run and charge. Friendly units are not affected by the Deadly Scenery rule if they're wholly within 12 inches. Not as big a deal. Iron Oak's a good one. Then the Artifact of Power is the Spear of the Hunter. Pick 1 melee weapon of the bearer, improve its Rend by 1. And the bearer and their mount fights at the start of the combat phase if they made a charge that turn. So now you've got an Always Strikes First, 2-up save Phoenix that's making your entire, well, not your army, but it's making your army -1 to wound, potentially, because of the Aura of Blizzard if you go with the Frostheart one, which is rad. Life Surge as well is you pick a unit within 18 inches and you heal D6 wounds. So again, if you wanted to make this like indestructible dude who's just in your opponent's lines, you could potentially do Emerald Life Swarm. You could do Life Surge as well. So that's 2d6 wounds back on a 14 wound model, which is effectively a 28 wound model with a 2-up save. It's brilliant. Then you've got Iron Oak Skin. Cast on 6, pick 1 friendly unit wholly within 18 to the caster. Subtract 1 from wound rolls that target that unit until the start of your next hero phase. So now that thing could be -2 with a 2-up save. You could cast Geminids into the army, and they could be an additional -1 to hit. So that is for like the tankiest, one of the, with the exception of Immortal and Nagash, which currently exists. In my opinion, that's one of the tankiest units in the game. And it's just like, how do you, and it's 320 points. 320 points. Like, what the hell do you do with that, right? It's just brilliant. And then you've obviously got, because you can throw that into your opponent's army early on. They're trying to kill it. They're trying to deal with it. And then you've got the ambushing units coming in from the side, doing what they do best. Genuinely rad. And lastly, you've got the Phoenicium, which obviously you think would be the best, but I don't think it's the best one for taking these Phoenixes in. So you've got the battle traits, Vengeful Revenants, add 1 to hit and wound rolls for melee weapon attacks if any friendly Phoenicium units have been destroyed in the same phase, which is okay. If you're having Phoenix as your general, you get access to Phoenix Guard as your battle line. I don't like the idea of intentionally trying to get something destroyed. Maybe if there was like a Chaos Spawn variant or something in this army, I'd go for it, but there isn't, so I don't really know. However, I love the idea of 800 points of Phoenixes. So this is no character Phoenixes. They fly up the board. They do their mortal wounds. They die, and then they add bonuses to the others around them, and then they die, and then they come back and they do some more flying. It's incredibly annoying, but I don't think it's worth playing for personally. However, you've got Blood of the Phoenix if you do take them in Phoenicium, which both types of Phoenixes get an extra wound. So now they're on 15 wounds, which is good, but I would prefer the Living City heal an extra D6, or just a D6 at all, or I like the idea of ignoring spells on a 5+ in Hallowheart. But the command ability is good. So each combat phase, pick a Phoenicium unit. If this model is slain within 12 inches of it, the destroyed model can fight before it's removed, which is cool because you take your 4 Flamespyre Phoenixes, you run them up the board, you do your mortal wounds, you charge, you fight, they eventually kill one, you spend your command point on your general version, they die, they fight, they come back, they fly again. Like, it's, you potentially can get the thing can die twice, but activate even though it's died twice, and activate before it dies. So you're going to get some really fun interactions, I think, there, in my opinion. And then command traits, you've got Secret Vengeance. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the general's melee weapons, so that's good. 1 of Fire and Ice. If your general is a wizard and they know all the spells from the lore of the Phoenixes, otherwise they can cast 1 spell from that lore. Now that's not a bad shout as a command trait. Knowing a spell so that that one Phoenix who's your character can buff the other Phoenixes around it. Means you don't have to have an additional caster that tries to keep up. Artifacts of Power, you've got the Amber Armor, which reduces Rend from 1 down to nothing. Phoenix Pinion, which a bearer can fly as well as run and charge. Really, really strong. The run and charge bit, obviously the fly bit is not that important. And then the Pyresh is, if you roll a natural 6 when saving with the bearer, you can heal 1 wound allocated to the bearer. So that's good on a Frostheart Phoenix. Because you just keep making saves, make 6s, heal them up. You don't have to do as much. You basically can have a fairly immortal Phoenix. And then you've got the spell lore. Only 1 really is relevant in this case, the Golden Mist. It's cast on 6. Heal D3 wounds to each friendly Phoenician unit wholly within 12 inches and is visible. So D3 plus you heal 1. They've all got an extra wound, which is not bad. And then if you are taking Phoenician, you're able to take the Phoenix Flight, which is 1 to 2 Frostheart Phoenixes, 1 to 2 Flamespyre Phoenixes, heal 1 wound to each Phoenician unit wholly within 12 inches of any unit with this battalion. So they could all be healing an extra 1 a turn, which isn't bad. But for me, I want to make use of the other abilities. I want to make use of the Living City abilities. I want to make use of the Howler Heart spells, where I'm getting D6 wounds back. Because really, healing 1 a turn to everyone is great, but if only 1 really is taking the damage, then I'm going to need... I want D6 or 2D6 put back onto that unit, and that is the killer. I think that's where I'd go. So for me, if I was going to... Which I am going to... I'm going to go Tempest Eye, 4 Phoenixes. Now, I'm so torn, and I think it's going to take some testing between Anointed and Flamespyres, just flat Flamespyres. Because if I just take the Flamespyres, which is cool, I'm able to take an Incanter with Comet. Now I've only just pipped over 1,000 points. I've got Battle Line units to choose. I've got Carriage and Overlords units I can take. I've got some really good Tempest Eye list. But what's interesting about the Phoenixes is they create this threat range, whereas I can say, I definitely can do 20 mortal wounds by just flying over you. Don't roll a dice. I just need the movement to do the thing. Can you stop me? Are you keeping away? I like that. You can put them, they fly as well, so that you can put them behind your chaff screens and fly over your chaff screens. Pretty good. I mean, you do have to roll a 2+. But Wargaming Dad, thanks for subscribing, by the way. And then if I'm going Frostheart Phoenix, I think I'm going Frostheart Phoenix in Hammerhall, or I'm going inside Living City. I like it inside Hammerhall because I like the ability to fight more, make other units around me, make it more tanky, which is good. So I'm thinking of just maxing out Phoenixes. What do I need to do? What do I need to achieve? And I think in that situation, you can make in Living City, you can make an incredibly survivable Frostheart Phoenix as well. And then again, if there's lots of magic in the world, I love the idea of going Howler Heart, getting into the magic game, and defending against those. This sounds fun, Rob. It is. It is. I've been very excited about doing this show today. Like, you've got some really cool narrative. You could paint them inside Living Cities. They're green. They don't have to be whatever colours you want. It's just the problem is you look at the Frosthearts, which are decent and have always been really good and incredibly potent in competitive play, and you think, right, in a cities list, it's even better. I can do loads of different things. But the Flamespyres, which have never had much love, don't forget, whenever we've just talked about the Flamespyres, those 1,200 points of Flamespyres, really, statistically, 2 of them are coming back. Tim's Wheelbarrow, thanks for subscribing. So, yeah, 2 of them come back at any point, right? If you've taken 4. So, really, like, you've got that additional 14 wounds rocking around, which is quite interesting if you go for the Anointed. It doesn't leave you loads. Darth Laser, thanks for subscribing as well. What up? So again, if I'm only taking 2, how do I kit them out? So do you want to take 1 Frostheart and 1 Flamespyre? Is that what you're saying, Tristan? Yeah, green copper fire would be rad as well. Like, that's the point. You don't have to go flame as in red. You could just be like, if I'm going to paint 4, I'm painting 4 different color birds. That's a fact. Later, Sinise. I would say, okay, I'm just taking 1. Oh, just taking 1 of each. Then I would go for Frostheart as a general and a Flamespyre, which is also anointed as well. Because if you're not going for the max, the only reason I would probably ever drop down to the Flamespyre Phoenixes that are 200 points is because that's bonkers output for 200 points. Like, it's wicked. Like, especially the ability to come back. 200 points is a steal. When you start getting towards the, I'm only going to take 2, I think you take the anointed version because they become really great. And you commit that 200 points. That extra 100 points. I'd probably go for, depending on what, I would go for maybe Living City, because that 1 Frostheart Phoenix is going to cause so much issue. The spell lore is decent. You can ally in Sylvaneth, which is really fun. So I would either go Tempest Eye. I wouldn't go Halahart. I'd go Tempest Eye, or I'd go Living City. And my reasons are, you can ally in Sylvaneth, wicked. You can ally in their casters and stuff that you wanted. Not forgetting you can bring Stormcast in as well. You can make that incredibly survivable Frostheart Phoenix that's just going to kick it. You can also have a Flamespyre Phoenix running around burning things, and I think that's really, really fun. The other version I'd go for in a Hammerhall would be, I would take them both as kind of buddies, and I would take it so that you've got the maybe the twin stones, because number 1, narratively that would look rad. Yeah, I'm Realm of Life, Realm of Fire, but you can do the add 1 to melee attacks that hit. You can just slam that 600 points of combat into your opponent's army, because you can use the command ability on a friendly Hammerhall unit that's wholly within 3 inches, and you can make them pile an attack again. So you can make them fight twice, and they're going to survive enough to fight twice, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I think that's what I'd go for, realistically. And then I suppose if you want to do Tempest Eye, you could do that, bring in some Kharadron Overlords and do some shooting. So the Phoenix could act as distraction. They move faster, so they're moving 19 inches now. They could hit into your army. They pin stuff in. Your shooting troops can either run up the board, or they can just like stay safe and shoot from behind while they're trying to deal with the Phoenixes. I think that's a rad build as well. If you wanted to be really sneaky, you could paint them as rainbow burbs and then make 2 sets of bases and put them on, 1 covered in lava, 1 in ice, so that you have the option. That's a great idea, Tim's Wheelbarrow. Great idea. Tell me about the Evil Tempest Eye bird builds. I'll write some army lists, and I'll post them up over the next couple of days, and I'll put them on the Honest Wargame website for what I think I would run. Because obviously it's what also you ally in as well. But overall... Grinaldi says in Living City, 4 Fire Phoenixes and 4 Luminarchs for max troll value. Unfortunately, Luminarchs are behemoths, so you can only take 4 of one or t'other, which is a shame. But that would be really fun if you could do that. You could do things like, you could have some, I think you could do some fun things. Like Comet's really good, right? Like Comet and the Phoenixes. Just drop that in your opponent's army, and they're just like, this sucks. But I think the Fire Phoenixes can potentially dish out more mortal wounds, because that's potentially 20 mortal wounds a turn. It's pretty great. Pretty great. And like most monsters are dying to that. And if all 4 birds then charge in, I think the monster probably will die. So, Shining White Knight, the Phoenicium. I only chose that city because I had already decided on purple, yellow, bronze scheme before I'd even had a sniff of the battle tome. Doesn't Shining White Knight, it doesn't mean that you can't like still use the army in anything else that you want to. Like, that's fine. The Phoenicium could be working for Hallowheart. They're like saving them from a ravaging horde, or you're like the yearlings protecting Gondor. Will the Phoenicium answer the call? Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed that. I've been really excited about talking about it. I think for Flamespyre Phoenix is specifically a really interesting thing we're not seeing on the tabletop right now. I think they're super annoying. I think even one just doing that 5 mortal wounds is not nothing. That's killing a character in the right situation, and taking out that key synergy. So it's a great piece. Think of it as an artillery piece as opposed to thinking of it as a monster, and I think you'll get in the right space. Anyway, I gotta go. It's been rad talking to you guys. Thank you very much. Join me over the next 3 days when we got more stuff. And DJ Batman, thanks for subscribing. Join me over the next 3 days. We've got some cool shows lined up. I'm really looking forward to Friday, where we're going to be making jokes for CanCon. So I need you to come prepped. I need you to come prepared. There's a lot of would-be jokers in the chat. Yeah, I need you guys here and ready to help me make some jokes up for CanCon, right? And then Thursday should be fun. We're going to talk army archetypes, which is going to be cool as well. Can't wait for CanCon. Me either. Especially now we've got the roaming cam. I've got all the equipment. I've just got to make it work. So join me soon. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Have a great day. Love you tons. If you are listening to the podcast, make sure you stay hydrated. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed or has helped people subscribe like Crazy Horse has today. Mostly fire-based jokes. How am I a joke? Does that count? Let's find out on Friday. See you guys soon. Have a great day. And yeah, just have a great day. And see you soon. Goodbye.